ॐ परतत्त्वे सदा लीनो रामकृष्णसमाज्ञया यो धर्मस्थापनरतो वीरेशं तं नमाम्यहम्. We started the study of Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga, and today is the second class, and the first chapter name is The Necessity of Religion. Last time we saw the meaning of the word Jnana Yoga, and the meaning is change of consciousness from our wrong consciousness about ourselves and about the world into the right consciousness which the rishis or the incarnations have. And the right consciousness is that reality is one without a second. We are not separate realities, neither the world is separate. And the main point is that this subject-object split is wrong. Reality is homogeneous. That is the main change of consciousness to be brought about. Now this change of consciousness can be brought about by devotion. The love is such a factor that it removes the difference between me and you, the difference between myself and God, myself and the whole world. So love is one way, but there we do not know what we are doing, we are loving, and that changes our consciousness. But here in Jnana Yoga, effort is made to directly try to change the consciousness. Now everybody is not fit for that. We do not know that we are conscious self. We are aware of ourselves only as body or mind. And so, we require bodily and mental changes. That is called Karma Yoga. The attitude behind karma, the motivation behind karma, when it is changed, then we say that we have attained Chitta Shuddhi, the mind has become pure. The meaning is that the body and mind are not now mine. I understand, I know that I am consciousness, and then I can change my consciousness. That is the rahasya of Karma Yoga. Anyway, Raj Yoga is an incomplete science. It is as if suppressing, repressing the lower functions of the mind so that the higher functions will shine. The mind will come to a proper condition, and then we can realize God. Anyway, so we come back to Swamiji's Jnana Yoga, because Swamiji was a past master in all the yogas due to grace of Sri Ramakrishna. And so, in this lecture we find Swamiji is talking first about the necessity of religion, which means that we have to feel in our life the need for such a transcendental subject. We have to feel the need that we have to change our consciousness. The present consciousness is not at all right. This need has to be felt. And so Swamiji is saying, necessity of conscious religion. And then Swamiji has said that this manifestation of which is religion, that is the strongest motive force, strongest cohesive force. And so it changes the destiny of man as individual and also of the nations, of society itself. And then he says that what is the origin of this force? And he says that there are two different origins. One is the worship of ancestors, which means our soul, our self, which is different from body, which sustains even after the body is dropped. So we are in search of our own reality. We can say search for Atman. And the other is when we look at nature, the universe, the vast universe, its beauties and sublimities, it influences our mind, and we want to know if what we see is only that much or there is a reality behind. So, these are the two sources as Swamiji has shown. Now, from here we read now, these two views, though they seem to be contradictory, can be reconciled on a third basis. Reconciled. That means both are true. Both are two aspects of the same search. Though they appear contradictory, means one is inside and one is outside. But Swamiji says, can be reconciled on a third basis, which to my mind, that means Swamiji has such a broad, universal outlook about religion. When we see many religions comparatively, then we understand things better. And Swamiji has no bias about a particular religion. And so he says that, to my mind, is the real germ of religion. And that I propose to call the struggle to transcend the limitations of the senses. Transcendence is religion, in one word. The struggle to transcend the limitations of the senses. When we search for our own self, something which sustains, even when the body drops, we are trying to see something which is not available to our senses. Similarly, when we peep into the realities of nature, we are trying to find something which is not available to our senses. And so, the struggle in both cases is to transcend the limitations of the senses. So the Swamiji says that from this, both views can be seen as complementary to each other, not competitors. Explains now, either man goes to seek for the spirit of his ancestors, the spirits of the dead, that is, he wants to get a glimpse of what there is after the body is dissolved. Or, second point, he desires to understand the power working behind the stupendous phenomena of nature that impresses us as stupendous, because it is universal. Whichever of these is the case, one thing is certain, that he tries to transcend the limitations of the senses. That is clear. He cannot remain satisfied with his senses. Most important statement. This is the sadhaka. Any yoga is for sadhaka only. Generally, question is asked, are these things for the common man? If the common man does not want to rise, then it is not for him. If the common man wants to change himself, wants to rise, then this is for him. So, about this sadhaka, Swamiji is saying, he, man, cannot remain satisfied with his senses. So that is the sadhaka. He wants to go beyond them. That is the natural urge. The explanation need not be mysterious. So, something mysterious? No. It is our own urge. That is what Swamiji is telling. It is our own urge which creates religion. Not that somebody has told something or some unnatural thing. So, our own urge, to me, now, this is the next thought. Next thought. Swamiji is telling us, to me, it seems very natural that the first glimpse of religion should come through dreams. In dream, what is there? What we see in the Jagriti, waking state, through our mind and through our senses. That is gone when we are sleeping. Now our senses are not functioning. We are very sure about it. And yet we see, feel things. So beyond the senses there is something. That is what the dream shows us. The dream tells us that there is something beyond the senses within us. And if we can arouse that, we will go beyond the senses, And so the germ has come through the dreams. First glimpse of religion should come through dreams. The first idea of immortality man may well get through dreams. Immortality means body is not functioning and we are functioning. So when the body totally drops also we can function. That is how the immortality will be gained, and that we see through dreams. Is that not a most wonderful state? Swamiji is explaining now. How? And we know that children and untutored minds, that means when man teaches, then our brain gets spoiled. When the brain is simple, when the thinking process is simple, that is in a child or in untutored minds. Find very little difference between dreaming and their awakened state. Very little difference means, as dream state is as much real as the awakened state. That is what the untutored mind or a child thinks. Because what is the difference? We then say, no, it is not like that, that like that. That is due to tutored mind. But the untutored mind and the child feels that this is real, that is real. If that is false, this is false. So, the same nature of the experience in the dream and waking state is found by the child or the untutored mind. So, Swamiji refers to it. What can be more natural than that they find as natural logic and created or artificial logic. So Swamiji says natural logic, that even during the sleep state, when the body is apparently dead, not functioning, that is the meaning, the mind goes on with all its intricate workings. Everything is there, feeling is there, different feelings are there, perceptions are there. So intricate functionings of the mind are all there. Complexes are there, everything is there in the dream state. What wonder that men will at once come to the conclusion that when this body is dissolved forever, the same working will go on. Now when the body is not functioning, it works. So even when the body is dead, it will work. What is that to say no? This to my mind would be a more natural explanation of the supernatural. Supernatural, that which is not natural in the waking state. So something is there in the dream. So something like that, even the rishis or the people who try to go beyond the senses will see something. And through this dream idea, the human mind rises to higher and higher conception. So dream only tells that without the body and the indriyas functioning, the same type of experience we are having. Now, culture, we try to go beyond senses. And when you go beyond the present senses, we experience differently. And we try to go beyond that, then we experience still differently. So, this is the attempt started from the experience of the dream, higher and higher conceptions. Of course, in time, now Swamiji is telling what happens to the tutored mind. Swamiji is not unaware of that, but he says that the idea has come from the dream. Of course, in time, the vast majority of mankind found out, that means some people, the untutored mind, do not find out. Mankind find out that these dreams are not verified by their waking state. That means in waking state that becomes all false. And that during the dream state, it is not that man has a fresh existence, but simply that he recapitulates the experiences of the awakened state. So on a critical study we find that the impressions of the awakened state go and we experience it in the dream. There is not something totally new. But once we dreamed and find it is different than the waking state, the search has started for the transcendental. But by this time, the search had begun. And the search was inward. So Swamiji talked of nature and spirit, but now, even to study external nature, we want to study ourselves beyond senses. And so the search is inward. And man continued inquiring more deeply into the different stages of the mind. So waking, dream and deep sleep are the stages of the mind. Similarly, there are higher stages. So man started seriously finding out what they are, how our experience changes, and discover higher states than either the waking or the dreaming. Because in dreaming, it is only the impressions of the waking state. But higher regions are there. We can actually transcend and find a new world. This state of things we find in all the organized religions of the world. So Swamiji is taking a broad view. If it is only in one religion, it may be wrong, but it is in all the religions. Called either ecstasy or inspiration. Names are different. Ecstasy is samadhi, state of the mind. Inspiration is somebody from outside has told me something. But it is a different state of the mind in which something outside message comes. So in the both cases, the supersensuous experience is there, explained as samadhi or something coming from outside, that is inspiration. In all organized religions, organized means which have a name and a society. Their founders, prophets and messengers, some were rishis and some were simply messengers carrying the message of somebody, are declared to have gone into states of mind that were neither waking nor sleeping. That means dreaming, in which they came face to face with a new series of facts relating to what is called the spiritual kingdom. What is a fact? That which we experience. And if a man goes into supersensuous region and experiences something, that is also called a fact. And face to face is a idiomatic expression, that means directly perceived. Directly perceived is called face to face. Not imagined, not reasoned out, but seen. With a new series of facts. Series means a different setup of facts totally. Facts means experience. Relating to what is called the spiritual kingdom. So what can be called? Spirit, beyond body, beyond senses. And we have experiences. So that is the spiritual kingdom. They realize things. So the things became real to them. They realized means their experience told them the things became real to them, not imaginary. Much more intensely. That is another thing. That is the proof of religion. We are seeing the world. In dream, the world is hazy. But in the supersensuous state, the impression of that world is much more strong. And so there is no question whether it is dreaming or that. The validity of the experience, the intensity of the experience is much stronger than what is our waking state. So much more direct than the waking state. They realize things there much more intensely than we realize facts. So the waking state experiences, compared to this, the supersensuous state experiences are more stronger. Then we realize facts around us in our waking state. Take for instance the religions of the Brahmins. Why is this name? This has nothing to do with the Brahmin caste. But in the Western world, what we call Hinduism was known as this at Swamiji's time. Swamiji himself was referred in many newspaper reports in America, the Brahmin monk. Though strictly speaking, Swamiji was a Kshatriya. But they know that this religion, the rishis were mostly Brahmins. And so, this name Swamiji is using not to say that this is a religion for the Brahmins. Don't misunderstand that. The thing is that in the Western world, Hinduism was known as the religion of the Brahmins. Take for instance the religions of the Brahmins, the Vedas. So, Vedic religion was called the religion of the Brahmins. The Vedas are said to be written by rishis. Rishi means mantra drashta. Swamiji has explained beautifully, these rishis were sages who realized certain facts. Mantra drashta. The exact definition of the Sanskrit word rishi is a seer of mantras of the thoughts conveyed in the Vedic. Very important thing. Somebody asked me that a mantra drashta means, does he see those very letters? He may see, may not see. The thought contained in that expression, the experiences told about in that expression, that he experiences. There is the meaning of mantra. Mantra is not the letters of the mantra. Mantra means the inner truth, the subtler truths experienced in those mantras. That is what the Rishi has seen. Important statement made by Swamiji of the thoughts, because there is a confusion. Mantra seeing. These men declared that they had realized. Now Swamiji wants to tell us what is realized. Sensed, if that word can be used with regard to the supersensuous, our senses are not reaching. But the directness of expression, Swamiji uses the word senses. And then he says that if it can be applied to the supersensuous, that means a direct experience, certain facts, and these facts they proceeded to put on record. That is what the Vedas are. We find the same truth declared amongst both the Jews and the Christians. There also, so Swamiji takes a broad view and says that the Jews also say that their founders experienced certain truths and they told them simply. Similarly, Jesus also tells the same thing. Some exceptions may be taken in the case of the Buddhists as represented by the southern sect. Buddhism became divided into two schools, Mahayana and Hinayana. The one set became gone to north. North is Japan, Korea, China, Tibet, that is north. And they practice Zen Buddhism, Dhyana Buddhism. But the other sect, part of the Buddhism, Brahmadesh, what is called Myanmar these days, Ceylon, these areas. So that is called the Hinayana. And they, it may be asked, if the Buddhists do not believe in any God or soul, how can their religion be derived from the supersensuous state of existence? The answer to this is that even the Buddhists find an eternal moral law. And that moral law was not reasoned out in our sense of the word. Through reason that moral law was not found out. But Buddha found it, discovered it in a supersensuous state. So supersensuous reality you cannot deny, whether God or soul you talk or not. That moral law Buddha discovered in a supersensuous state. He is telling about that now. We refer to that briefly at the end of Practical Vedanta. And that very thing Swamiji is explicitly telling here. Those of you who have studied the life of Buddha, even as briefly given in that beautiful poem, The Light of Asia, so I told you that it influenced the thinking people in the West. So when a man knows something, through that something more can be explained to him. May remember that Buddha is represented as sitting under the Bo tree until he reached that supersensuous state of mind. Hihasane Shushyatu me Shariram, etc. He meditated till he reached the supersensuous state of the mind. All his teachings came through that and not through intellectual cogitations. I remember one more thing here. Swamiji has not talked separately about Sikhism because that is only a part of Hinduism. There was a session of all religions in Belur Math, perhaps in 1993. And I was in Chandigarh, I was invited to preside over the session on Sikhism. Now Sikh scholar, today's fashion, the Sikh scholar said that in Sikhism there is nothing mysticism, all is rational. I said, if it is all irrational, why the gurus are necessary? We can reason it out. How the Sikhism was born? Guru Nanak, when he used to take the sheep for grazing, the sheep would loiter and Nanak would sit in a place and meditate and go into supersensuous state. And that he has expressed in all the songs. And later Gurus also expressed those very visions in songs. And that is how Sikhism is born. And we have to study those songs to get at those experiences. That is Sikhism. I remember after the session was over, a team of young Sikhs had been called to sing the opening song. Then we were sitting, all of us, for tea. They said, Maharaj, in Hindi, आपने आज हमारा धर्म हमको सिखा दिया, दूध का दूध पानी का पानी करके रख दिया. You have taught us what is our religion and you have separated milk from the water. That means they immediately understood that how the Sikhism has to be approached. So, whether it is separate or not is not the question. It is a branch of Hinduism. But some use Brahminical, that means Vedic. And so, all the religions, I am adding one more, all the religions, all the religious sects, you may say, tell us the same thing. Thus, a tremendous statement is made by all religions. Swamiji's broad mind, that the human mind at certain moments transcends not only the limitations of the senses, but also the power of reasoning. Reasoning can be applied only to the data available. And if the senses are bringing the data, reason works. When we go beyond the senses, we go beyond that field of reason also. As Swamiji has said, the moral law is not reasoned out. It has been sensed in the supersensuous state. So the claim is made by all the religions, different religions, but it comes to the same claim that the human mind at certain moments transcends not only the limitations of the senses but also the power of reasoning. it then comes face to face with facts which it could never have sensed, that facts which could never have been experienced by our senses. Could never have reasoned out. So unless the senses had supplied data, how could have reasoned out? Science makes hypothetical claims based upon sense experience. That is not religion. These facts are the basis of all the religions of the world. So Swami is stressing the word facts means actual experiences. Of course, you have the right to challenge these facts, to put this to the test of reason. If something is beyond reason, it will not be irrational. And during practical Vedanta, we saw that the function of the reason is to disprove what is wrong. It cannot build anything new. Now, let reason work on these truths, and it cannot disprove them. And so, we have to put them to the test. If you find it is not rational, then we can reject it. Nevertheless, all the existing religions of the world claim for the human mind this peculiar power of transcending the limits of the senses and the limits of reason, and this power they put forward as a statement of fact. So, facts experienced, and this power is also a fact. Power to transcend the senses is also a fact. Means available to everybody if he rightly tries. Apart from the consideration of the question how far these facts claimed by religions are true, we find one characteristic common to them all. That means apply reason if you want, but what Swamiji is finding out is the common thing in all the religions. They are all abstractions as contrasted with the concrete discoveries of physics, for instance. Abstractions mean sukshma, subtler. That is the main point. All these truths are not to be experienced or reasoned out by our senses. They are the subtler essences. So that is called abstractions. Computer physics, for instance, concrete discoveries of physics. And in all the highly organized religions, that is the Hinduism and Christianity and all that, they take the purest form of unit abstraction. That means several abstracted facts we get, but we go on climbing above and above and above till we come to a unit abstraction. Now this unit abstraction can be personal God or the impersonal principle, but it is unit. Either in the form of an abstracted presence, satta, Indriyatita satta, as an omnipresent being different from satta, being is conscious and all-pervading consciousness, being. As an abstract personality called God, Sagun Brahma or Ishvara, name is given to a person. As a moral law, as the Buddhists are telling us, or the form of an abstract essence underlying every existence. This is Brahman. Abstract essence. Swamiji is using a language which will be understood by all the Western thinkers. So he is not using our general technical terms, but we can understand better through those terms. Abstract essence underlying every existence. This is the description of Brahman. In modern times too, the attempts made to preach religions without appealing to the supersensuous, just now I told you. Supersensuous state of the mind have had to take up the old abstractions of the ancients and give different names to them as moral law, the ideal unity, and so forth. They think this is by reason, thus showing that these abstractions are not in the senses. None of us have yet seen by senses an ideal human being, and yet we are told to believe in it. Supersensuous brought in different language. None of us have yet seen an ideally perfect man, and yet without that ideal we cannot progress. So all going beyond senses. Thus, this one fact stands out from all these different religions, that there is an ideal unit abstraction, which is put before us either in the form of a person, what we call Ishvara or second Brahman, or an impersonal being, and that is the Brahman, Satchitananda, or a law, as the Buddhists are telling, or a presence, Satta Matram, or an essence, the Saram. We are always struggling to raise ourselves up to that idea. That is what the sadhaka is doing. All are struggling, but they do not know what they are doing. The sadhaka consciously struggles to rise above the senses. That is religion. Every human being, whosoever and wheresoever he may be, has an ideal of infinite power. Yes, that is the most common thing, ideal of infinite power. Every human being has an ideal of infinite pleasure, sukha, ananta. Most of the works that we find around us, the activities displayed everywhere, are due to the struggle for the infinite power or this infinite pleasure. How science came into being, to find a unit substance. How medical science came into being, to find one medicine for all. So, the ultimate is to find the ultimate happiness, ultimate power, but a few quickly discover. Few, here few. Everybody is struggling, but few quickly discover that although they are struggling for infinite power, it is not through the senses that it can be reached. So all humanity is struggling through the senses only. But a few people see that it cannot be come through the senses. They find out very soon that that infinite pleasure is not to be got through the senses. Or in other words, the senses are too limited and the body is too limited to express the infinite. So infinite is the ideal and we are trying to express it through our body and senses. It is too small to express that. To manifest the infinite through the finite is impossible. You go on attempting. Through science or anything, it is impossible by the nature of things. And sooner or later, man learns to give up the attempt to express the infinite through the finite. Sooner or later, it has to come to that. This giving up, this renunciation of the attempt is the background of ethics. People are afraid when you talk of renunciation. People are mortally afraid when you talk of renunciation. But not only religion, ethics properly found out is based upon giving up of the attempt to express infinity through senses. This giving up is renunciation. Renunciation is the very basis upon which ethics stands. There never was an ethical code preached which had not renunciation for its basis. Impossible. Ethics always says, not I, but thou. It is not renunciation. We had found in practical Vedanta also unselfishness. Its motto is not self but non-self. This has to be understood little. The self is with a small s. In Vedanta, not self is to be given up and self has to be retained. But here, small s, that means I, ego. It has to be given up. So, not self but non-self. Non-self means other than me. That is the meaning here. The vain ideas of individualism to which man clings when he is trying to find that infinite. So he is trying to find that infinite and he wants to remain the individual. There is this conservatism. Man does not want to change his ideas. Man does not want to change his consciousness. Man does not want to change his present state, which is continuously changing by itself. The vain ideas of individualism to which man clings when he is trying to find this infinite power or that infinite pleasure through the senses have to be given up. Say the laws of ethics. You have to put yourself last and others before you. That is the non-self. The senses say myself first. Ethics says I must hold myself last. Thus all codes of ethics, are based upon this renunciation. Destruction, not construction, of the individual on the material plane. So individual cannot stay on the material plane. You have to destroy that and to build it up in the superconscious plane where it becomes universal. That infinite will never find expression upon the material plane, nor is it possible or thinkable. So matter itself is too limited for the infinite to express. That one will find sooner or later. So, conclusion. Man has to give up the plane of matter. And that is religion. Not some moral values. Moral values, if derived from the reality, moral values on the way to that reality are different. Simply moral values do not stand. So man has to give up the plane of matter and rise to other spheres to seek a deeper expression of that infinite. So infinite has to be expressed. Matter is not sufficient. For a deeper expression, we have to rise above. In this way, the serious ethical laws are being molded. But all have that one central idea, eternal self-abnegation. This word Swamiji has used in Karma Yoga. We remember the 6th chapter of Karma Yoga was non-attachment is complete self-abnegation. Denial of this small self. It is not true. It is not my reality. That only can give us non-attachment. Eternal self-abnegation, not for some time. Completely, the small self has to be given up. Perfect self-annihilation, another word used. Abnegation, annihilation. Wow, this is Swamiji's religion. Is the ideal of ethics. Now Swamiji says people do not know this. People are startled if they are asked not to think of their individualities. They seem so very much afraid of losing what they call their individuality. Even the yogis, Gautama says, yogino vibhyati asmat. At the same time, the same man would declare the highest ideals of ethics to be right. Never for a moment thinking that the scope, the goal and the idea of all ethics is the destruction and not the building up of the individual. Now in Swamiji's days, even today, there is a school of thought called utilitarianism. Find that which has maximum utility. And Swamiji says, you cannot find it unless you base it upon the reality which is supersensual. So that is the next topic. I think we better stop here. Though we have spent only 45 minutes, but we have covered the important ground. First, the reconciliation. Let us recapitulate. First, the reconciliation of the two theories. Searching for something beyond nature, searching for something which sustains even of the body's parts. And the common in both of them is to go beyond senses. And then in the dream we find the first glimpse of another reality. Though later on we find it is repetition, but then the mind goes higher and higher and finds certain facts, and that are called rishis. And these facts we have to test by reason. But if reason cannot disprove them, they stand themselves. And then Swamiji says all religions take together, this is what they are preaching. In another terms, we find that our real nature is infinite. We do not know it, and we are trying to express it through this body, through this mind, through this world, through matter, and it cannot be done because all these are finite. So we have to stop the attempt and retreat our steps. That is renunciation, and that is at the start of all ethical codes. Ethical codes means if we want to be a better man, that is the ethical code. If we want to be a better man, you have to follow moral ethical code. And that ethical code is not I but thou. So it is based upon the renunciation. People are afraid when they are told this, but they say ethics is right. So any logic taken to its ultimate has to be seen. If we want real ethics, we have to give up ourselves. That is self-abnegation. It does not come through senses, it does not come through reason. There is a reality, there is the plane of superconsciousness, relative and absolute, and in the absolute superconsciousness, either it is a Sagun Brahman, or Ishvara, or a moral law, or Nirgun Brahman. So these are the various shades looking into that, but that is the unit abstraction. And that itself, if we try to realize, then we find that Tyaga is the first step. That is what Swamiji has told up till now. So this utility and its falsity, we'll take it up from the next term. Swamiji's lectures have a force of lifting man above what he is today. You know what Ramarala said? Even to touch these lectures at the distance of 30 years, that means 30 years after Swamiji lectured, Ramarala got the prints. And he says, sends a thrill to my body. What could have been those listeners when they heard it directly from the hero? So Swamiji's words have a force, and that force is trying to lift us. We have only to follow him and go higher and find ultimately our own real nature. Om Paratatve Sadalino Ramakrishna Samagyaya Yo Dharma Sthapana Rato Vire Shamtam Namamyam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamasti.